Welcome back. You're watching Tradecraft for Life. So today we're finally going to jump into watching the interrogation of Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to watch it at 1.5 times speed, and we will speed it up as we go, and we will determine if we need to slow it down, rewind, and go back. So let's just jump into it. But we have to do this now, because if we don't, I'm going to keep putting it off, and by the time this topic is dead, then I'm going to get around to it. So let's jump in.
Good morning. We're now on the video record. Today is Wednesday, the 17th day of February 2010. The time is 11:16 a.m. We're here at U.S. Legal Support, 444 West Railroad Avenue, West Palm Beach, Florida. This is the video deposition of Jeffrey Epstein, taken by the plaintiffs in case number 502008CA028051 the matter of LN versus Jeffrey Epstein, filed in the 15th Judicial Circuit in Fort Palm Beach County, Florida. Court reporter is Terry Becker of U.S. Legal Support. The videographer Joe Rogan of U.S. Legal Support. Would all counsel please state your appearance for the record?
Brad Edwards, on behalf. Mr. Jaffe.
Not Mike, Stephen Jaffe.
Michael Pike on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am. Can you give us your name? Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. Epstein, you made a comment when you came in the room that you were appreciative of me being respectful to your housekeeper yesterday, and I intend for that to be the same with you today. I want to start by asking you, at this point, we've gone through a lot of discovery in this case. There aren't many disputed facts as to what actually happened at your house. And generally, I think you would agree that you devised a way for young females to come to your house and
Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. So, if you hear my dogs pitter-pattering around, it's because they like what's going on outside. So they're doing that, and if you hear a little bit of barking in the background, they are trying to protect me because I am worthwhile for them protecting. At least they think so. The little one is the most aggressive. She will bark at a stuffed animal on the floor because she thinks that stuffed animal is about to attack us. It hasn't happened yet. However, I have seen the movies. I have watched Chucky and the other ones with the little stuffed animals, and it could happen. I mean, Hollywood is telling us it could happen. So what do you think? I think the dog isn't crazy. But anyways, let me introduce you to Old School. So this is Tradecraft for Life, and you're watching an interrogator's review of it. All right? And this interrogator is going throwback with his old marshmallow suit. Boom. And boom. Boom! Doing the throwback with the old marshmallow suit. I think I was one of the last classes back in 2006 to get this, because not many after, actually, I don't know if any after me got it. Let's get into it.
Mr. Epstein, you made a comment when you came in the room that you were appreciative of me being respectful to your housekeeper yesterday, and I intend for that to be the same with you today. I want to start by asking you, at this point, we've gone through a lot of discovery in this case. There aren't many disputed facts as to what actually happened at your house. And generally, I think you would agree that you devised a way for young females to come to your house and engage in varying...
All right, let's rewind that. That is an interesting statement right there. This is very interesting. Let's see what this agent said.
...degrees of sexual... You devised as to what actually... We've gone through a lot of discovery in this case. There aren't many disputed facts as to what actually happened at your house. And
there aren't many disputed facts to what happened at your house, Mr. Epstein. Let's see what the response is. Hey, so anyways, before we even dive in further, this dude, the way he is questioning, well, first of all, he's not really questioning. He's setting something up, but he's doing a piss poor job. He's trying to build rapport by saying, like, hey, dude, I'm going to respect you.
Generally, I think you would agree that you devised a way for young females to come to your house and engage in varying degrees of sexual activity. Some of the girls as young as 12, some of them as old as 17 or so, most in between. But as of yet, you haven't provided an explanation. So I want to provide you an opportunity to tell the jury at this time why you did it.
I'm going to object to confusing, compound, and irrelevant as wording.
I actually understand what the lawyer is saying here. Because the lawyer, he doesn't get to rewind it. And he's like, what in the world are you trying to ask here, dude? This is a common issue in interviews and interrogation done by the government. We use a lot of stuff like this to train on because there's no need for this to be really confusing. You set up your list of questions. You can break this into 3 sections here and just separate them. And if you do separate them, like you say, hey, I'm building my rapport. I'm making a statement here. First of all, you don't want to make statements anyways. And you don't want to say, hey, you don't want to say stuff like this, like, hey, yeah, we know this is, you're bringing little girls in and so on, and you set your house up for this. No. I mean, maybe up front to say, hey, this is what we know, so then you can dig in deeper elsewhere. I don't know. It would be something I'd really have to think about. But generally, you don't want to come out and say something like that because you want them to offer you up information. And if you're telling them statements, well, now they know what you know to an extent. And that's not something you want to necessarily divulge. Sometimes you do. Again, it depends on your approach. Right now, he's doing like a pride and ego up with some respect into it, added into it. And he's doing an approach that we don't have officially, but it's called the I'm going to confuse you to all get out.
You know, I'd like to answer that question, frankly. However,
this is the worst. This is the attorney's worst nightmare. Like, no, dude, don't talk. Don't talk, please.
at this time, my attorneys have told me that I can't, and I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, or I risk losing their counsel. Accordingly, I therefore assert those rights. Sorry.
Interesting. Interesting how he put that in there. He'd be like, if I don't listen to what they're saying, they say they're going to leave. Probably because they know some stuff. Which tells me that they would be an interesting one to actually talk to about this. Because now they're not bound by attorney-client privilege. I'm sure some of them will be like, well, we still are, his estate and this and that. I'm sure they would still try to get around it, not talking about it.
And in addition to that, I'm going to move to strike counsel's statement as narrative as well.
I understand. We wanted to provide him the opportunity if today was going to be the day.
Okay, so one thing I didn't mention either is it was interesting how the interviewer, I'm going to call him an interviewer because I wouldn't call him an interrogator because he just sucks. I hope since he's done this, he's gotten better. And I'm not even saying I could do better because who knows? I mean, you never know until you actually go in and you do it. You really don't. So I'm not going to get on my high horse and be like, I could go do that better. But I am going to critique it because it's so much easier to be the dude sitting on the sideline and critiquing. It just is. But it's also how you learn, and it's also how you get better and you improve your skills. And that's why you record yourself and you go back and watch it. So you can get better. And it's cringe. It really is cringy watching yourself. It's just like I don't like to watch a lot of my videos once I put them out. I just don't. I mean, there might be some people out there who love watching themselves. I don't, because I don't need to. I get to watch myself every day. I mean, true story. But it's interesting how he goes, all that aside, it's interesting how the interviewer goes, hey, so what do you want to tell the jury today? Which is really weird. I don't know if they do that a lot in depositions. I'm not a huge person who's dug into a ton of depositions because I've not had the need to, and I don't really care for the most part. But why would you, in my mind, as an interrogator, not someone who's dug into depositions a lot, why would you say, what do you want to tell the jury? I know they're going to play this back for the jury, but why would you say that? Maybe it's because he never went in front of a jury, like in person. So this is his only time to address a jury. Because you would think that they all go in front of juries. But I don't know. I mean, when you're at this level of special treatment, who knows? I don't know what happens. And I don't think a lot of us do. Because you reach a certain level of treatment and stuff happens differently than it would happen for you and I. And I will say that is what pisses the most Americans off. Because it shouldn't matter if it's the bum out on the corner or the richest guy in the world. It should all be done the same within the court system. I don't care how much money you give the city, the government, etc. I don't care what you do for them. If you are in that situation, it should be the same across the board. And this is what pisses people off. Because it's this treatment that's bullshit. I only curse when stuff pisses me off a little bit, and that pisses me off. Not to mention, a lot of the homeless are veterans too, so I have a special place in my heart for them.
Same thing, move to strike, narrative.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative.
Are you kidding?
No, I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
Move to strike.
No, that's the question.
I'd like to answer that question as well. I'll get all your other questions today. However, I have to follow my attorney's advice. They have told me that I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right to not answer those questions today or any questions relevant to this lawsuit. So accordingly, I'm going to assert those rights and under the Constitution is guaranteed by the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment.
Okay. Would you consider yourself addicted to sex with minor females?
Same objections.
You know, Mr. Edwards, I want to be very respectful. And as the current U.S. Attorney has described your law firm as a criminal enterprise and part of one of the largest frauds in Florida's history, it's been reported that your firm has fabricated multiple cases against me in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions and millions of dollars. So unfortunately at this time, though I'd like to answer that question, on advice of counsel I'm going to have to refrain and assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right.
So if you actually provided receipts there, Mr. Jeff, I don't think we'd be upset. And if they were actual legitimate receipts, I don't think we'd have a problem with them, even though they're coming from a horrible source. So let's track where we are. We're at 413 right now. Let's go back a little bit. And so if we are looking at microexpressions, and I don't like microexpressions, but I do like I do like the movement of certain facial features within the context of what you're saying. So that kind of leans into the microexpression world and so on. But it has a lot of context to when you were speaking and what your face is doing. Because a lot of times you will be saying no to something, but you'll be shaking your head yes. And you do that subconsciously. And sometimes it's not consistent, but sometimes it is. And this is exactly why you need a baseline on everything. You need baselines. I will tell you this. The demeanor of Epstein right here is actually, it's pretty impressive. But it probably is so because he's probably been in many, many situations like these. So it's like another day, man. I think that's probably how terrible of a human he is that he's so used to this that he can have a relaxed demeanor. It's just a thought. I don't have actual evidence on that. But those are some heavy-hitting questions, man. It's funny because those questions should be asked to a bunch of people we're seeing right now. And sadly, I don't think many of those people will ever be asked those questions because maybe this guy's the facilitator for that, but he's not the only guilty one. I mean, not at all. Let's see if we rewound it far enough.
Told me that I can't, and I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights.
We didn't go back far enough.
And I must,
And irrelevant as wording.
Okay, so here...
I'm going to object to confusing.
Here, he's kind of just like blah, hand on his face. This is actually where I pulled. I'm going to share this with you. Here. All right. See, that's where I pulled that image from, is right there in that point in the video. And I had AI say, age this picture 5 years. And that's all I said. I gave it the picture and I said, what would this look like if it was 5 years older and it had a beard? If it had a beard. And this is what it gave me down here in the left-hand corner. All right, this is the picture from X. Supposedly, this picture from X on the right, bottom right, is when he was walking with the bodyguards. Supposedly, that's AI generated, potentially. I haven't ran another AI against the one where he's fat, and I think he's by the trunk of a car. I think that one supposedly is real. It's so hard to tell what's real and what's not anymore that it is what it is. But either way, it's very interesting because it looks like him. This in the bottom right or bottom left, this even looks like the fat picture of him that we have behind the trunk. So I don't know. I don't know if any of them are legit. So who knows? Who knows? So he's kind of blah right here.
Compound and irrelevant as wording.
You know, I'd like to answer that question, frankly. However,
he adds his glasses back to it so he can read what he needs to.
at this time, my attorneys have told me that I can't, and I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, or I risk losing their counsel. Accordingly, I therefore assert those rights. Sorry.
And in addition to that, I'm going to...
He has a little bit of, when his forehead scrunches up here, a little bit of like, yeah, whatever.
I move to strike.
We go back
Losing
and
the
look
5th,
at
6th,
a little bit more.
my attorneys have told me that I can't. However, you know, I'd like to answer that question, frankly. However, at this time, my attorneys have told me that I can't, and I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, or I risk losing their
This is
counsel.
concentration.
Accordingly, I therefore assert those rights. Sorry.
When that little line shows up,
And in addition...
when that little line shows up by itself right here in the middle, I believe that's his, I'm trying to focus, tell.
to that, I'm going to move to strike counsel's statement as narrative as well.
I understand. We wanted to provide him the opportunity if today was going to be the day.
Same thing, move to strike narrative.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative.
Are you kidding?
Look at his eyebrows.
No, I
Move it
mean,
up
I
and
don't
down.
feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
He went from like,
No,
Are you
he
kidding?
went from kind of like, what? Oh, you're asking
no,
that?
I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets
To
here,
a little
right?
bit of like, really? What do you mean you're not divulging secrets?
Move to strike.
No, that's the question.
I'd like to answer that question as well. I'll get all your other questions today. However, I have to follow my attorney's advice. They have told me that I'm going to have to refrain and assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right.
Can you then provide an explanation for what relevance that soliloquy of yours has to whether or not you engaged in sex acts with she was a minor?
Objection. No, he cannot. Argumentative. Compound. Harassing.
Mr. Pike, with all due respect, it wasn't my idea for him to give this speech about a former RRA law firm. I'm just asking him, elaborate on that.
Counsel, I'm working with your follow-up question, so I'm objecting, and I'm objecting to form, and stating the reasons on the record as to why the form is required to be objected to based upon your question.
Will he elaborate on the relevance of that soliloquy to his touching when she was 13, 14, and 15 years old in a sexual manner?
I'm going to object again. Argumentative. Compound. Harassing.
15 years old in a sexual manner.
Let's watch it again.
When she was 13, 14, and 15 years old in a sexual manner.
Look,
I'm going to object again.
that was a type
When
of
she was
pleasure
13,
you
14,
got
and 15
when you
years
said
old in a
that.
sexual
See?
manner.
I'm going to object again.
Yep,
Argumentative.
that was
Compound.
definitely a type
13,
of pleasure.
14, and 15 years old in a sexual manner.
I'm going to object again. Argumentative. Compound. Harassing. And irrelevant as worded.
You can answer.
I'd like to answer. However, I'm going to have to assert my 5th Amendment, 6th Amendment, and 14th Amendment right, as advised by my counsel. Otherwise, I risk losing their advice.
Mr. Epstein, have you ever been diagnosed with a sex addiction to minors by a psychologist or other medical professional?
I intend to respond to all your questions at some relevant time. However, today, at the present time, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to any questions relevant to this lawsuit, and I must accept their advice or risk losing my 6th Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, I assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights to the United States Constitution.
In addition to that, Mr. Edwards, as the court has ruled in several matters, Mr. Epstein's medical history is not relevant at this time, nor has he placed same at issue in this case.
Understood. Mr. Epstein, were you
This case.
Understood. Mr. Epstein,
That's a little
were you sexually abused as a minor?
on the right side of his mouth.
Right. Again?
Were you sexually abused as a minor?
You know, I'd like to respond to all your, if any questions seem to be relevant, but I would like to respond to any relevant question at this time. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to the questions relevant to this lawsuit today. I must accept their advice or risk losing my 6th Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, then, I assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right to the United States Constitution.
Isn't it true that you have engaged in some sexual interaction with hundreds of underage minor females in the last 10 years of your life? Is that true?
Objection. Relevance.
Mr. Edwards, the current U.S. Attorney has described your law firm as a criminal enterprise and part of the largest fraud in Florida's history. It has been reported that your firm fabricated multiple cases, many multiple cases against me in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions and millions of dollars. Unfortunately, at this time, in response to your question, my attorneys advised me that I must assert my 6th Amendment, 5th Amendment, and 14th Amendment right. Though I believe you know that I would really like to answer your questions today, but at this moment I must assert those rights and risk having my attorneys resign.
You're invoking your 5th Amendment rights to each of these questions because you know that your answers will incriminate you and you feel that it will result in you being prosecuted for these crimes. Isn't that right?
Objection. Argumentative. Harassing. And calls for a legal conclusion.
No, in fact, the Supreme Court recently said that the 5th Amendment right is there to protect the innocent. So that's the way I'd like to answer that.
Are you actually telling the jury that you didn't commit the
Look at
Wait,
this
like
little
this. But we
smile.
said
when
that
he
the-
Calls
says
for a
this.
legal conclusion.
No, in fact, the Supreme Court recently said that the 5th Amendment right is there to protect the innocent. So that's the way I'd like to answer that.
Are you actually telling the
Smile.
jury
Yep.
that you didn't?
He had a little smile when he said the innocent and then smiled afterwards. I mean, because he knows it doesn't apply to him. So that's why I'm saying if you look at facial expressions with context of what they are saying, then it can become semi-permissible, semi-reliable, whatever term you want to use. It still doesn't tell you anything, or it doesn't tell you a lot, and it doesn't mean a whole lot still, but there is something to it. It's interesting how everybody focuses on him and what he did with certain people, and I'm sure he did plenty. I'm not saying that he didn't do any of that, but what I will say is he probably facilitated 90% plus more so than like what he was partaking in. So he probably facilitated way, way more for other people than him partaking. That was probably a very small percentage. So most of the investigation would probably be for what he is and who he is facilitating for, rather than him involved with said individuals. That's a big part. Don't get me wrong. It's a huge part, but it's only a small little sliver, as we can see. And sadly, as I don't think we're going to see much come out of any of this, which is what pisses people off, because it's bullshit. Because it doesn't matter what kind of money or position or anything you have, you cannot do this to children. And we have said that anyone under the age of 18 is a child, 17 and below. It's what our society is built on. It's the law that we have put into place. And it applies to every citizen, even outside the U.S. There are certain stuff, and maybe I'm going to get this completely legally wrong, but there's certain stuff that you can still apply to American citizens when they're outside the U.S. It might not hold the same weight, you might not get convictions and so on and so forth, but you're an American and you have certain morals and ethics you have to uphold. And sadly, the people actually making these laws and these rules, they're not upholding the stuff that we're voting on and putting into place, and the stuff that they're putting into place that we don't even know about. All they're doing is feeding their perversions and making themselves richer. And it's just, again, this is why everyone is pissed off.
Commit the crimes that have been alleged against you by the various females that were underage when you engaged in sex with them? Are you telling the jury that right now?
Objection, argumentative, harassment.
Not to mention, they're protecting the actual perpetrators. They're redacting the names of the actual criminals here. And they're accidentally releasing the names of the victims. We knew it was going to be shady. And oh, how it has been shady. And I don't even know if it's been shady on purpose. Because sometimes people just do stupid stuff. And they do make stupid mistakes and so on. But these are mistakes that are so stupid that it almost feels like it's done on purpose. And I don't know why. Or it feels like a game. Again, I've been talking about this since I've started my channel. So much stuff feels like theater. It feels like theater. And it feels like we have a bunch of freaking actors in front of us. And we do have a lot more than is recognized, for sure. Most of our politicians are actors because they're fighting on screen and separating us as a society and behind closed doors eating dinner together and having fun.
I would like to respond to that question, as you know. However, at the present time, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to any questions relevant to this lawsuit, and I must accept their advice at risk losing my Sixth Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, I assert my Fifth, Sixth, and 14th Amendment right under the United States Constitution.
Mr. Epstein, you understand that this is the video that will be played to the jury in trial against you. And wants answers. The jury is going to want answers. So I know that you're telling us that you're going to respond at some time in the future, but the time is now. Would you like this opportunity to explain why you engaged in sexual activity with beginning when she was 13 years old and you were 50 years old?
I'm going to object once again. We're getting way too argumentative with the questioning. The questioning is compound, it's speculative, and it's also harassing.
Well, he is right. It is compound. I mean, yeah, it is compound. I mean, at this point, you've realized that the guy's not going to talk, so there's no point in being really good with your questions. You just try to, at this point, you would review a couple other approaches And, well, first of all, doing an interrogation, or I guess this is an interview, but doing an interrogation where you would have a lawyer in the room, well, first of all, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be considered an interrogation, but it would also make things really difficult. Because you could get this guy to talk. He wants to talk. He's just being shut up by his lawyers. And why do we have lawyers who think it's okay to cover stuff like this up? You'd be like, yeah, but you have rights and this and that. I agree. Yes. But when those rights are harming other people, we have to be able to hold people accountable. It's a fine line to walk, you know? But if someone would have had the balls to stand up early on, we would have prevented probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, of victims and people being victimized from happening. But since we don't have any people with a ton of money in law firms who want to stand on what's right and morally right rather than legally, just because it's legal doesn't make it moral and doesn't make it right. I think I would be okay if the people that are his attorneys were canceled. I hate cancelization. But I would say that the lawyers are, in large part, just as guilty in a lot of sense. Because yes, you do want to protect stuff, but there is a limit and there is a line. And when that line is children, you should have no attorney out there protecting you from the children getting justice. And because these lawyers did that, we now have way more victims because of it. Because those lawyers are pieces of shit. Look, I know that's a fine line to walk, but we can't allow this. I don't care what the rights are. We cannot allow, well, I have rights, so it's okay that I abuse little kids and I got away with it because my rights allowed me to get away with it. Like, no, those kids had the right not to be abused. And you took that from them and they didn't have any rights to be able to deny it and say, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this. No, you took that from them, you sick. And that's what the lawyers protected. Anyways, we could go on with that forever. So, but yeah, talking about stuff like that, man. Talking about that stuff just happening to kids, man, that's the first time I've had a tear in my eye in a long time.
Whether or not this deposition video thereof is played in front of a jury is a question of fact, and it will be determined by a judge pursuant to a motion and limiting various portions thereof may or may not be played. So, having placed those objections on the record, I'm going to instruct Mr. Epstein not to answer that question.
Mr. Pike, I don't know if you watched the 13 hours of harassing questions to Ms. that she sometimes invoked her Fifth Amendment rights, and I understand the adverse inference that will be given. And she was made to answer these questions, and these exact same questions were asked of her. In fact, I'm using the phraseology from Mr. Ludier. I'm not trying to harass him. I'm simply asking him to explain to the jury, if you're saying that it didn't happen, say it didn't happen. If you're saying it did happen, explain to the jury why you did it. That's all we want to hear. No, I'm being respectful.
In an effort to keep a clean record and be respectful to the court reporter, rather than have a diatribe back and forth between you and myself, I'm going to move to strike your last statement as irrelevant. Let's move on.
Mr. Epstein, is it true you were born January 20th, 1953?
Yes.
Where?
New York.
Where in New York?
Brooklyn.
Did you go to high school there?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Lafayette High School.
After high school, did you attend college?
Yes, sir.
And where was that?
In New York.
What college did you attend?
Cooper Union.
I'm sorry.
Cooper Union.
And did you get a degree from Cooper Union?
No, sir.
How many years were you in college?
I believe 2.
What did you study?
Physics.
And why did you leave college early?
I intend to respond to all relevant questions regarding this lawsuit. However, at the present time, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to questions that may be relevant to this lawsuit. So accordingly, I assert my constitutional rights as guaranteed by the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment.
Are you invoking your Fifth Amendment right?
Why did you leave college early? Because he started to get set up with stuff, man. This is where the empire started to be handed over to him. And that's why he stopped right there. It's exactly why he stopped right there. It was a good attempt by this guy to try to go in and kind of establish a timeline to that point. It's a very broad timeline, but it has to be, right? Before you can start digging down. That one has to be. I'm not upset at that line of questioning.
As to why you left college, is it safe then to presume that that answer you believe would incriminate you in some way?
Okay, I'm going to move to strike speculative.
He's trying to ask it in a different way, but I mean, the lawyer is not going to let him answer it.
Argumentative, harassing, calls for a legal conclusion, and I know exactly what you're trying to do here, Mr. Edwards, is lace the record with questions that would ultimately give you an adverse inference at any potential trial of this matter. So having put that on the record, I'm going to instruct him not to answer that question based upon his 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights to the United States Constitution.
With all due respect, you cannot invoke his 5th Amendment rights. Your attorneys instructed me in that fashion, and Tatum Miller had to do it herself. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Epstein. Can we assume that you invoking your 5th Amendment rights as to why you left college early, that that answer you feel would incriminate you?
Once again, move to strike for the same reasons. You can.
I've already answered the question, but I'll restate the answer if need be, because I intend to respond, and I'd like to respond to all your questions today. However, my counsel has advised me I must take the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right as under the U.S. Constitution.
Okay. After college, where were you employed?
I'd like to respond to all your questions today. However, as advice to counsel, I intend to take the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right as provided by the United States Constitution or risk losing my counsel's representation.
Well, isn't it true that you were a teacher at the Dalton School in New York after college?
Again, I would like to respond to all your questions. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to any questions today regarding to this lawsuit. So I must accept their advice to risk losing my 6th Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, I assert my constitutional rights as guaranteed by the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment to the Constitution.
Mr. Epstein, did you have sex with any underage students while teaching at the Dalton School?
Could you repeat that?
Yes. Did you have sex with any underage students while teaching at the Dalton School in New York?
Mr. Edwards, your firm has been described by the U.S. Attorney as one of the largest, as a criminal enterprise, perpetrating one of the largest frauds in Florida's history. It has been reported that your firm fabricated multiple cases against me and others in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions and millions of dollars. Unfortunately, at this time, in response to your question, my attorneys advise.
So I might have to go back and I might have to pay attention more when this happens. However, I think when he's starting to feel a little bit guilty of something, he says this about the law firm that is interviewing him right now. It feels like a pattern that could be building, because instead of saying, no, I invoke my whatever rights he's using, he retorts back with an attack. And when you're attacking, it's because you're defending yourself. So he's defending himself here, and that is why he's throwing that attack out there.
I that I must assert my 6th Amendment, 5th Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights. Though I believe you know I'd really like to answer your questions, but at this moment I must assert those rights by having my attorneys resign.
Mr. Pike, I think you know that he has a couple options here. He can answer questions or he can invoke his 5th Amendment rights. This non-responsive verbiage regarding the RRA law firm is not one of the options. It's inappropriate in a deposition, and I'd ask that you instruct your client not to obstruct this process any further. I'm not going to terminate the deposition. I want it to finish. But obviously, this is going to be the subject matter of some motion in the courts, and you know that the judges are not going to appreciate this. So I'd like it if we could just move this process along by eliminating that portion of his answer. I understand what he's saying. I get it, but that's not something responsive to any of these questions, and I think that you know it's inappropriate.
I think the opponent is answering the questions. So if you believe that the responses are inappropriate, I feel that you can take it up with the court with the motion that you're speaking of, as you've done several times before.
Why? I mean, the judge is probably going to his island. Why would the judge care? I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. And that's speculation. I'm not saying the judge on this case went to the island. Not officially anyways. It's on the 5,000 documents yet to come out.
After leaving the Dalton School, is it true that you began working as a money manager at Bear Stearns?
I intend to respond to all your questions regarding this lawsuit at some relevant time. However, at the present time, my attorneys have criminal enterprise, Mr. Edwards, Amendment right under the U.S. Constitution.
Isn't it true that while you were working at Bear Stearns, you were already engaging in sex with underage minors?
Again, I believe you know the answers to those questions, but
yes.
May I finish?
Move to strike.
Sure.
Let the witness answer your question.
I would like for him to answer questions.
Mr. Edwards, as you know, there are serious 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment constitutional rights at issue here, and the witness is attempting to answer your questions to the best of his ability, despite how laced they are with adverse inference presumptions.
I don't want the adverse inference. I want answers. That's it.
So, having said that, please allow the witness to answer the question.
Can you say the same thing over and over and over again?
You were already engaging in sex with underage minor females.
As your firm has been described as by the U.S. Attorney as a criminal
only 18
enterprise
minutes in.
using some of the cases fabricated against me personally? I would like to answer that question today. However, on advice of counsel, I must assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution, or in fact, risk losing their representation.
At some point in time while at Bear Stearns, you met and managed the money for a fellow named Leslie Wexner, correct?
Again, I would like to answer all questions.
I have an actual legit question. If he's paying the lawyer, why would the lawyer care and say, if you talk about this, you're going to lose my representation? Is it because the lawyer would be implicated in something if he talked about it? Just throwing that one out there. Or the law firm or something. Would they be found potentially covering up? I mean, with all we have seen on this topic, not to mention others, but all we have seen coming to this point in 2026, where we have seen that so much is a lie, that they've not been honest in our textbooks for school, and so on, that they've been so dishonest everywhere, that even these law firms have so much to hide. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me that they're hiding a crap ton. Maybe we need to go dig into these law firms that helped protect this dude. Again, I don't think we'd have a judge that would approve that, because he'd be like, well, then they're going to come back and we're going to dig into the judge, and the judge is like, no, please, no. Again, it's a broken system, man. I'm so sick of the broken system. I am just so sick of it. It works great for you and I. That's just because we don't have enough money. If we had enough money, we wouldn't have a problem doing whatever we wanted to do. And that equates to power. So the one thing I've learned in my career is that it's not about the money. It's about the power that the money gives you. It always goes back to power. Power and control over people, etc. It goes back to the power. And that's what the money is good for, because it provides power. And that's what people in politics seek, because the money brings all that. That's why money has significance, because it doesn't matter what the money is. Like in terms of what kind of currency it is. As long as it can bring the power, that's all that matters. And power is, you can influence people to, and can kind of control them into doing whatever you want them to do. It all kind of boils back to that, and boils down to that. Yeah, because what do you think we use money for on a daily basis? We use it for making life easier. Not that we need any of the stuff that we have, we don't. But we use it for making life easier, or at least being entertained, or making stuff so we can go eat, right? Because we got to sleep, eat, and do like some sort of activity throughout the day. That's all life consists of, right? Everything else, like entertainment and stuff, all that, none of it matters. The three basic things matter. You know, you're eating, sleeping, and moving, like some sort of health, whatever you want to call it.
Questions relevant to this lawsuit, but today I must assert my 5th Amendment, 6th Amendment, and 14th Amendment right under the U.S. Constitution.
I read another deposition of yours that you do not consider yourself to be
I'm
homosexual,
going to let
correct?
this play and go get the dog oops.
Correct.
Do you consider yourself to be bisexual?
No.
Okay. In any event, you did develop a sexual relationship with Leslie Wexner at some point in time, is that true?
No.
Okay.
Did you have a business relationship with Mr. West? I intend to respond to all relevant questions. I'd like to answer most of your questions, Mr. Edwards, today. But however, especially since your firm has been described by the United States Attorney in South Florida as a criminal enterprise purported to have pulled off the largest fraud in Florida's history, I would like to answer that. However, my attorneys today counsel me that I must assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution, and therefore I don't do that.
Are you saying that because Rothstein Rosenfeld Adler was determined to be a criminal enterprise, or somebody was running a criminal enterprise out of that law firm, that is the reason why you're not going to answer these questions today? You looked that together in that answer. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that right.
I'm going to take the 5th Amendment. I intend to respond to all relevant questions today. I would like to respond. Unfortunately, my attorneys counsel me I can't. I must assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution.
Because other law firms have asked very similar questions, and you haven't responded to any of theirs either. So I just want to understand what the relationship between Rothstein Rosenfeld Adler is to you invoking your 5th Amendment rights today.
She's been barking her little heart out because her heart's going like pitter patter, pitter patter. See? Say hi. Might as well add some entertainment to the video. And she's out.
To have sex with you on a daily basis.
Form argumentative harassing. Unfortunately, at this time, though I'd really like to answer those questions, like I've done for most of your questions here today, Mr. Edwards, your firm was described as a criminal enterprise, a serious criminal enterprise by the current U.S. Attorney. Part of that criminal enterprise was fabricating cases of a sexual nature against me and others in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions of dollars. So though unfortunately at this time, no matter how I'd like to respond to your questions, I must assert my 6th Amendment, 5th Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution, or risk having my attorneys reside.
Isn't it true that was yours and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex slave from the time she was 15 through the time she escaped when she was 19?
Again, objection, argumentative, harassing. Mr. Edwards, your firm has been described as as a criminal enterprise by the current U.S. Attorney and part of the largest fraud in Florida's history. Part of that fraud was fabricating multiple cases against people like me and others of a sexual nature in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions and millions of dollars. So though I'd like to answer that question, my attorneys have told me today I must assert my 6th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 5th Amendment right.
Isn't it true that you and Ghislaine Maxwell celebrated her 16th birthday with her and had sex with her on that day?
Form, compound, confusing, argumentative, harassing. Mr. Edwards, I'd like to answer that question. My attorneys told me to...
You know what I was saying earlier? Attack when he feels like he has to be defensive. He's going on the attack again because he felt defensive over the desires. It is actually, that theory is actually coming to fruition. What do you know? It's like I'm actually trained in this. So even though it doesn't seem like you can get anything out of this, you can actually get stuff. Like, we're getting little bits here and there. The more you go into it, it's just kind of boring to sit here and listen to them say the same crap over and over and over again. Real quickly, what I want to say here is it's really weird. Again, I'm throwing this law firm that's questioning him. I think it's a law firm from what I have gathered. I'm throwing them under the bus because they're only talking about him and Ghislaine. We're not going to mention any of the leaders, the super wealthy elites that we know about. We're not going to name any of them. Yeah, this gets me going. It pisses me off. Because as much as this law firm, you think they're trying to do the right thing, they're not trying to do the right thing. If they were trying to do the right thing, they would actually do the frickin' right thing. I don't know exactly what their agenda was behind this, but it was still working forward in a cover-up. There are certain things that I will be a little bit pissed at, even the law firm that's in here questioning and stuff like that, because they feel is equally culpable in a lot of this. However, I do have to respect them for coming out against it and doing all the right things, right? But for not going in the right directions because maybe they're scared or something like that, kind of pisses me off. However, the anger that I have and the contempt that I have is for the lawyers defending this douchebag and all the douchebags in the repertoire that we haven't gotten to yet. Crap, I don't know how long I have been on mute for. This is why I hate muting the mic. I always forget to unmute it. I know it hasn't been long.
Was yours and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex slave from the time she was 15 through the time she escaped when she was 19?
Again, objection, argumentative, harassing.
Mr. Edwards, your firm has been described as as a criminal enterprise by the current U.S. attorney and part of the largest fraud in Florida's history. Part of that fraud was fabricating multiple cases against people like me and others of a sexual nature in order to fleece unsuspecting investors out of millions and millions of dollars. So though I'd like to answer that question, my attorneys have told me today I must assert my 6th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 5th Amendment right.
Isn't it true that you and Ghislaine Maxwell celebrated her 16th birthday with her and had sex with her on that day?
Form, compound, confusing, argumentative, harassing.
Mr. Edwards, I'd like to answer that question. My attorneys told
Look
me...
at that. Look at this sicko having fun. See? This is why he plays the game the way he played it. He enjoys this. You know, to some extent he does, who enjoys doing this. But overall, these people enjoy when they feel like they have to work themselves out of a situation. Because there's some screw is off in their head to where they enjoy this stuff. It's the same if you watch psychopath killers and stuff like that when they're being spoken to. They just enjoy it because they're nutcases. Just like the people who are doing this stuff to these little kids. They're nutcases. Those are the actual people. The people who are in these files doing this stuff to little kids are probably the people that we need to put in the insane asylums. Because they're sick, nasty freaks. And I would say at a minimum, they need to be in insane asylums, if not worse. All right, this is the best part. We got to watch this over again.
Under the U.S. Constitution. Mr. Edwards, can you throw me one of those little sucky candies?
That's going to be the thumbnail. Can you hand me that sucky thing? So you have to think about this, man. And this should piss you off. This is 2010. They're telling us all the crap that, now we're getting details on today. They're telling us what they know. And they didn't charge the stupid dude with it. He didn't get locked up and put away. This interview is done in 2010, and this is what they know. And it's forming their questions. And it wasn't like 6 to 8 years later, he ended up getting arrested. Maybe more than that. That's bullshit. That is high-class bullshit. And we need to figure out... I'm going to pull something up real quick. Let's look at this. This is exactly why you know that it's still being covered up. Even though they're releasing stuff, it's not an honest form of it. They're putting on the show. They're making the theater in front of us to show you this. Okay, so who was elected in? Ooh, bam. And why was she put in? Because we already knew that she had experience in covering this up and pushing it off. So she would be able to do it up at the higher echelon. I think that she was planned all along to come in. And was it Matt Gaetz? Matt Gaetz was just it was a play in the book, and it was always a head fake. And then that way when Pam Bondi came in, the people who were like, okay, yeah, we voted for this. And then they go, oh, sweet, this is going to be great. She's going to do awesome. When she was planned all along to come in and cover it up in ways that it needed to be covered up. Because we're not getting everything, but we're not gonna. I don't care if they've released everything that they had to this day. There's stuff in there. There's stuff that has been found that has already probably been completely erased. And it's possible it could still exist, but it would definitely be on a standalone system or a hard drive somewhere. It wouldn't be connected to anything. I still think there's some stuff that's been permanently erased. It is what it is. Why wouldn't we think this? Why wouldn't we think this when when this lady was running the whole show the entire time this guy was being questioned. It's just disgusting to think about, man. It's disgusting to think about. And it's disgusting that the average American will not ever look at Pam Bondi being in control then and Pam Bondi being in control now of the legal system and think anything of it. Be like, oh, that's just normal. Okay. I'm not even saying to go crazy with it, but I'm saying use some critical freaking thinking, man. Use some critical thinking and see what you can deduce from it. And I'm not even saying, speculate, but you don't have to put it out there as fact. That's all. Because we don't even know what's true anymore. It's exactly why AI was released in the fashion it was. So we don't know what's true, and it's hard to tell what's true and what's fake. Because now you can blame anything on AI. And then you say, well, no, you can't, because you can go back and look at the computer and look at the MAC addresses, or you can look at the metadata and see when something was created and time-stamped and this and that. Yeah, I don't know. It's like trusting a computer for DNA. I don't trust it. If you could physically pull up DNA reports that weren't generated by computers and you could literally see them under a microscope in real time and determine stuff matches, I would trust it. I don't trust stuff going into computers. And you say, well, that's stupid. Well, yes and no, because computers alter stuff all the time and we build programs to alter them. And you say, well, yeah, but we confirmed that this one is real. Who do you mean by we? Like you individually? Or you read what they wrote to you saying this is how we confirm the system and this is how we sealed it? Okay, but now you have to completely trust that person and that entity that did that way. And you also have to trust that they repeated it. And we're like, yeah, but we went back and checked it. I'm like, did you personally check it yourself? When you start to drill down on stuff, that's why computers, as good as they are, they still have a wide variety of fault. Technology it's always a failing point, 100% of the time. Humans fail, yes, but humans fail in different ways. Humans fail in human ways. But it's why human intelligence is much more reliable than any of the technological intelligence out there. And it will be around long after technology is destroyed. Because if everything went to crap, and let's say EMP went off and all technology was destroyed, the only intelligence we would have the ability to do is human intelligence. Still. And it's the most reliable. You just have to have people knowing what they're doing. Because you can say that signals intelligence is pretty reliable when you need to determine maybe a position of, let's say I want to find my iPhone using the iPhone app. Okay, I can track it to exactly where it is. But I can't tell you if I have, the person who's tracking it can't tell you if I have it or whoever has it, unless they are physically there and see who actually has possession of the thing. That's one example of a failure point to it. Also, the way that spoofing has started to work is crazy. So there's more to it than meets the eye. But the best failure point is human intelligence. Because yes, human intelligence has failures, as every intel does. But you can trust humans more reliably than you can technology. Because technology, yes, in a sense it can speak to you, but it can't speak to you the way humans can. And AI and robots and all this stuff, it's never going to get to that point. Technology will never get to the point to where it can replace humans. People think it will, but people are just dreaming off the stupid Terminator movies and all those movies from back then. But we don't even understand the human brain. We don't know anything about it. We really don't know anything about it. They have barely touched the human brain, and with all the stuff they know about it, and they know quite a bit. I will say they know quite a bit, but in retrospect, it's really nothing. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Makes sense? Doesn't make sense? But we really know nothing about that. And a computer's not even close to being able to do what the human brain does. Yes, it's pretty impressive what it can do. I'm not saying that. And it can process stuff and memorize stuff in probably a better fashion, more reliable fashion, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And every time I try to do something really impressive with AI and stuff like that, it's still really stupid. And it's going to get better. I'm not even saying that it's not going to get better, because it is. But it's never going to ever be able to compete with the human. Even if it can do basic human jobs, it's still not as good as a human. Until you can clone a human, which I don't think that we've gotten even close to that, even though they say we have. And yeah, until you can do that, I don't think we're going to be anywhere close to anything. I think we're still really far away from anything crazy like that happening. I mean, look at quantum computing. That's been on the horizon forever. And it's still not a thing. It's still not a thing. And it's been talked about forever, spoken about forever, and it's not a thing. There's all sorts of weird stuff out there and theories about it, but it's still not a thing. And I don't think it's going to be a thing. I don't think it's going to happen. I think something else is going to pop up before quantum computing ever becomes a thing. Anyways, we got way off topic. Like, this is the baseball diamond. This is left field. And we're way over here. We're not even in the ballpark anymore. So you know what I'm thinking it is? This kind of popped up into my head. It's not that he would lose his counsel and his representation with this law firm, because lawyers will do anything for money. We already know that. I mean, that's clear and evident. It's that he would lose his connections and his representation and his influence or protection from the New Jersey from the Middle East. That's what it is. I don't know why I didn't see this before. I'm sitting there listening to him say this over and over and over again. Yeah, we skipped ahead a little, but that's what it is, man. He's losing that protection. And at some point, he either really lost that protection, and that's why he ended up dead, or that protection, he ended up dead. You see the air quotes? So, yeah, that's what it is. It's not with these lawyers. Why did I not see that before? That bugs me. Like, okay, whatever. But yeah, that's what it is, man. It's the New Jersey of the Middle East. That is the protection he is talking about. You see? But that's why you listen to a lot of different stuff and you think and you roll stuff through your head, because you have to put these things together and then you have to go out and prove it. But that would be a waste of time trying to go prove something like that. There's a lot of stuff that you don't waste your time going to go prove, because it takes a while to actually go prove some stuff. And if you waste your time doing it, then you're going to not have that time to go do other things. So, do with your time with what you want. But yeah, don't waste your time on stupid stuff like that, trying to go prove that. Because what's it matter? There's no reason to go prove that right now. Because we all know that to be true, whether we can prove it or not. I will say that it is impressive, his emotional state throughout the duration of it. It is sick, though, because you can watch, and early on we saw it, and you see a couple smiles and smirks. Like, he enjoys it, because these pervs enjoy this stuff. Like I've said, he didn't have any angry outbursts. He started repeating the stuff that said, hey, like, I'll lose my representation with the New Jersey of the Middle East if I talk about this, so I can't talk about it. That's what he told us, basically. Because we all know that the lawyers in the room that were with him would be with him regardless, because he's got a ton of money. I looked up some of the stuff online about the interview, and they were saying, well, he had no panic. Well, of course, he had no reason to panic. It is interesting that he put some of those digs against the law firm that was in there doing the interview when he felt like he was getting more specifically attacked on certain questions. I would probably, during that entire interview, show distress because, like, how boring. Like, we're not going to say anything. We all know we're not going to say anything, so let's save ourselves the 5 hours. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy that we pay lawyers to go sit in a room and do this when we know no one's going to answer, and they get paid thousands of dollars for this? That's the most retarded shit that I've ever seen. So, like I say, I curse when I'm pissed off sometimes because that pisses me off. Because that, in a sense, is a form of freaking fraud. And I don't care where the money's coming from. Poor lawyers. But anyways, I mean, I'll be nice with kind of what I put out. And the reason why it pisses me off is because it's an entire system built on crap and corruption. And, well, if we don't go ask those 5 questions, then we can't pay the judge $10,000 a day for not asking questions either when they come in. It's all corruption that feeds off corruption. And they're like, well, yeah, but we made it legal. That doesn't make it any better. That makes it worse. It makes it worse. You're like, yeah, but it's legal. Well, so then we're okay with having stupid shit legal? Just because it's legal doesn't make it right. That was Jeffrey Epstein being interviewed on Tradecraft for Life. We will do way better interrogations and interviews in the future. So don't let this be the standard. However, it is the topic of discussion, so we got to talk about it. And if any better interrogations come out of this dude where he actually talks, God forbid that ever be released, we'll actually go over it. Because I do think that in some circumstances, I think that this dude would sing like a canary. But he wouldn't because he's afraid of losing that connection with the New Jersey of the Middle East. I mean, because he is from, his origins are from there at least. I know he said he was born in New York and all that, but yeah, a lot of members of the New Jersey from the Middle East are born in New York. So that's what he was deathly afraid of, is losing that connection, not his representation with the law firm that was there. That he could care less, because you can go get a new good law firm. It don't matter. And it could be a little bit mixed in with the law firm that he's at knows a lot of the nasty stuff too. That could be a tiny little bit. Maybe. I think it's more the New Jersey of the Middle East. Abso-freaking-lutely. All right. You've been watching Tradecraft for Life. Go out and spot someone lying. Make sure you properly interrogate them. And I do not endorse anyone being harmed during your interrogations. And I am not responsible for it.